The first time I heard my daughter talking to someone who wasn't there, I told myself it was a phone call. That's the easiest lie to tell yourself, standing in a hallway at 11 at night listening to an 8-year-old's voice through a closed door, low and careful, pausing in all the right places like she's answering someone. A phone call. Kids do that. I almost believed it myself, for a few more weeks than I should have. To make any of this make sense, I have to go back to the spring before any of it started. My wife's father died in April, Gary. A big, easy man who'd hand you the coat off his back if you so much as shivered near him. 30 years running the hardware store on Main Street, remembering everyone's name. He went quick. Heart. One week he was fine, the next he wasn't. And by the time we got the call, it was already over. Sarah took it the way I'd never seen her take anything. She and her dad had been close in that quiet way. A phone call every Sunday. An easy kind of love that didn't need much talking. After the funeral, she just stopped. Stopped eating properly. Slept through whole afternoons and lay awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling. Answered every question in one word, if she answered at all. She'd worked the front desk at the medical clinic in town for 6 years, and within a month they'd let her go, quietly, politely, the way small towns do things, but let go all the same. I got her in to see a doctor through a friend of a friend, and there were pills after that, the kind that are supposed to even things out. They helped, some, but there was one thing no prescription touched. Every week, without fail, she needed to go to the cemetery. We went together, always. Emily stayed with my mother those Fridays, and Sarah and I would drive the 15 minutes out to Miller's Bend Cemetery, past the old mill, where Gary was buried under a granite stone that still looked too new for a graveyard. She'd stand there and talk to him, low, the way you'd talk to someone who was only in the next room. I stood back and let her have it. It seemed to help, and who was I to take it from her? Until the Friday, it didn't go the way it always did. My mother had a dentist appointment that Friday, so there was nowhere for Emily to go. I called her that morning to check, a normal call, nothing to it. And instead of her usual, "Hey, sweetheart," she picked up sounding strange, distant, like I'd caught her mid-thought about something else entirely. "What's going on?" she said before I'd even told her anything. Not hi, not how's Sarah doing, just that, like she already knew something was coming. I told her about the appointment, asked if she could still take Emily for a few hours in the afternoon instead. There was a long pause on the line, long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. "I can't help you with that today," she finally said, flat, almost apologetic, in a way that didn't match the words. We didn't push it. We told Emily she was coming with us this time. Saturday morning, Sarah was up before either of us, standing in the kitchen making pancakes she wouldn't eat, humming something under her breath. I remember thinking that was a good sign. We drove out together, the three of us, windows cracked because it was one of those first real spring days, the snowbanks finally gone from the ditches. Sarah went to the grave the way she always did. Emily and I hung back near the car for a minute, and then Sarah asked me to keep her company. So I walked up with her, and Emily wandered off toward the tree line at the edge of the cemetery grounds, the way kids do when there's nothing for them to do and a whole field of grass to run in. I should have watched her closer. I know that now. Sarah knelt down at the stone and started talking, the way she always did. But this time it built into something else. Her voice climbed, cracked, and within a minute she was sobbing, really sobbing, saying things I couldn't follow, fragments, her father's name over and over. I'd seen her cry before. I hadn't seen this. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Emily standing very still by the tree line, watching her mother fall apart in a way an 8-year-old shouldn't have to watch anything. "Go wait by the car for me, sweetheart," I told her. She didn't argue. She turned and walked off toward the gate. It took me another 20 minutes to get Sarah calm enough to move. When we finally turned to head back, I couldn't see Emily anywhere near the car. "Where's Emily?" Sarah said, and there was real panic under it, fast and sharp. "She's around here somewhere. I'll call her." It rang twice before she picked up, breathless, said she'd wandered a bit past the fence line and was coming right back. A minute later, I saw her small shape appear at the far corner of the cemetery, walking fast toward us, like nothing had happened at all. We drove home in a silence that felt heavier than it should have. I remember thinking, somewhere on that drive, this has to stop. Not the grief, you can't stop grief, and I wasn't fool enough to try. But this, whatever this was becoming. I didn't say it out loud yet. I didn't know yet what this even was. That night I slept harder than I had in weeks. The kind of dead, dreamless sleep that swallows you whole. I woke up feeling like myself again for the first time in a month. Sarah didn't. She came into the kitchen the next morning looking like she hadn't slept at all, hair unbrushed, eyes swollen, moving slow like she was underwater. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She didn't answer right away. Sat down across from me like she was choosing her words off a very short list. "Honestly," she said, "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean, I don't know how much I actually slept last night, or if I slept at all." I asked if she'd taken her medication. She said yes, same as always, same time, same dose. She said she'd gone to bed, lain there scrolling her phone because she didn't feel tired yet, put it down eventually, and then nothing. Not sleep exactly, not awake either. She got up once to use the bathroom, she remembered that clearly. Came back, lay there a long while just staring. Not sleepy, not alert. Eventually she said she felt a headache building and went to the kitchen for another pill. And sometime after that, she thinks, she finally drifted off. But she wasn't sure. That was the part that seemed to unsettle her most. Not that anything had happened, but that she genuinely couldn't say what had. Then she chewed her lip the way she does when she's deciding whether to say something out loud. "Promise you won't think I need to be committed." "Sarah, just promise." I promised. She told me that somewhere in that stretch of not quite sleep, not quite awake, she'd heard a voice. Her father's voice. Not in a dream, she was careful to say. She was clear that she didn't think she'd been asleep for it. Just there, in the dark of the bedroom, saying her name the way he always had. She said it didn't scare her. She said, God help me, it was the first time in a month she'd felt something like peace. It was probably a dream, I told her. "You said yourself you weren't sure if you were asleep." "Maybe," she said, and let it go easier than I expected. "Probably." I told her, gently, but I told her, that I thought it might be time to see someone. Not instead of the cemetery, just alongside it. And maybe we cut back on the visits a little, just for a while. She surprised me by agreeing before I'd even finished making the case. "I've been thinking that too," she said, "before he comes back for us." She said it lightly, almost like a joke, and gave a small laugh after. But the laugh didn't reach anywhere near her eyes. I kept Emily quiet while Sarah slept it off, and by evening things felt almost normal again. I told myself the worst of it had passed. I was wrong. It hadn't even started yet. I went back to work Monday, and the day ran long and ordinary, right up until early afternoon when my phone rang and it was Sarah. And she wasn't speaking in sentences. She was just saying my name and then Emily's, over and over, like the two words had gotten stuck together. "Sarah, slow down. What happened?" Just come home. Please, now. I don't remember the drive. I remember the highway going by too fast, and my hands too tight on the wheel, and every worst version of the next 5 minutes running through my head on a loop. I got the door open and nearly knocked Sarah over getting inside, braced for anything. And there was Emily, standing in the front hall, fully fine, fully whole, blinking at both of us like we'd lost our minds. Sarah looked like she'd aged 5 years in an afternoon. Blotchy face, hair stuck to it, hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "What happened?" I asked Emily, since it was clear I wasn't getting a straight answer out of Sarah yet. "I don't know," Emily said. "Mom came into my room and started yelling at me for no reason. I was just sitting there. I was on the phone." "With who?" Emily looked at the floor. "It was a friend." "On whose phone?" "Mine," she said, too fast. I turned to Sarah. She told it slower, piece by piece, sitting down like her legs had finally given out. She'd been in the kitchen, heard what she thought were voices. Kids, she figured, from a neighbor's yard, since Emily's window was open. Hadn't thought anything of it until it kept going, on, and she'd realized the window was actually shut. She went to check on Emily and heard the voices coming from inside her room, clear as anything. 2 voices, back and forth. She'd called out. The talking had stopped instantly, dead silence. And when Emily finally opened the door, there was no one else in there. Laptop closed, phone charging in the kitchen, where it had apparently been the whole time. Sarah checked the closet, checked under the bed, checked the window latch. There was nowhere for anyone to have gone. "Emily," I said, as calm as I could make my voice. "Who were you talking to?"
"Nobody. I told you. I was on the phone."
"Your phone was in the kitchen." She didn't have an answer for that, just looked between the two of us, and something crossed her face that I want to say was fear. But it might have just been the look of a kid caught out in a lie she didn't know how to walk back. I let it go that night. Told myself it was some kid's game, an imaginary friend dressed up in a voice too grown for one. I didn't sleep well either, though. And somewhere in the dark, I found myself thinking about a security camera for her room, and hating myself a little for thinking it. I took the rest of the week off work, told my boss it was a family thing, which wasn't a lie. I wanted eyes on my own house for a while. Nothing happened for 4 days. I started to relax. On the 5th day, Sarah went out with a friend from the old clinic job for the afternoon, glad for a reason to leave the house, and I had Emily to myself. My mother called around noon saying Emily wasn't feeling well. She'd had her over that morning, apparently, some chips and chocolate she shouldn't have had, and now a stomachache. Nothing serious. I picked her up, got her home, dosed her with something for the stomach, and she went to lie down in her room while I settled in front of the TV with a beer and the hockey highlights, glad for one uncomplicated hour. I wasn't paying full attention to the game. Somewhere under the announcer's voice, I kept catching something else, a murmur on and off coming from down the hall. I told myself it was Emily on the phone again, the same as before, and reached for the remote to turn the volume up rather than deal with it. The remote slipped out of my hand and hit the tile with a crack that made me flinch. And in that half-second of quiet after, I heard it. Her phone, buzzing on the counter 3 feet from me, plugged into the charger. Right where it had been the whole time. So who was she talking to? I was down the hall before I'd finished the thought, hand already on her door. "Emily, open up, right now." Nothing. I knocked harder. "I mean it. Open the door or I'm coming in." The door opened a few seconds later, slow, and I pushed past her into the room without waiting to be invited. Laptop shut on the desk, nothing on the bed. Closet, small, shallow, nowhere for a person to fit. But I checked it anyway, moved every hanger aside like an idiot, expecting to find someone crouched behind her winter coats. Checked the window. Latched, locked, exactly the way it should be. 3rd floor. Nothing outside but a straight drop to the driveway. "Emily, sweetheart, who were you talking to?" "Nobody, Dad." I hit my fist against her desk harder than I meant to, and saw her flinch.
Sorry, I said, quieter. I'm not trying to scare you. We're worried about you. All of us. You don't believe me. How'd you shut the laptop that fast? I heard it just before I opened the door. I don't know. I just did. Her eyes were wet now. Why don't you believe me? I let it drop, because I didn't know what else to do with an 8-year-old crying in front of me, insisting on a story I knew for a fact couldn't be true. I told her it was fine, that I loved her, that I just worried. She hugged me like she meant it. But driving to Canadian Tire the next morning, I found myself in the security camera aisle anyway, and I bought one. Small, wireless, the kind that syncs to your phone. I told myself it was for peace of mind. I didn't tell Sarah I was thinking about putting my own daughter's psychiatrist appointment on the books alongside hers. That night I lay awake a long time turning it all over. Sarah's cemetery visits, the not sleep she couldn't explain, and now this, whatever this was, in Emily's room, twice now. I decided I needed a break from all of it, just a few days, before I did something I couldn't undo. In the morning, I asked my boss for the unpaid leave I'd been dreading asking for, and to my surprise, he barely blinked, signed off on 2 weeks without a fight. My last day in the office actually went fine, better than fine, quiet, easy, the kind of day that lulls you into thinking the worst has passed. I left a little late, stopped at the hardware store on the way out of town for the camera mounting kit I still hadn't installed, and the roads were empty by the time I pulled back onto the highway toward home, the sun already low and orange through the windshield. I was half singing along to the radio, one hand loose on the wheel, when a shape came off the shoulder into my lane out of nowhere, and I stood on the brakes so hard the seatbelt cut into my collarbone. A kid. A teenager, maybe 14, 15, standing in the middle of the lane like the road belonged to him, staring at my headlights without flinching. "What the hell are you doing?" I shouted through the open window, heart still slamming. He looked at me a beat too long. Then he turned, unhurried, and walked off into the ditch grass without a word, like nothing at all had happened. I sat there a second with my hands shaking on the wheel before I could make myself drive on. At home that night, I told Sarah and Emily about the leave. 2 weeks, starting now. Sarah looked relieved. Emily's face did something else. A flicker of something I couldn't place. Not happiness, not the way a kid usually takes news like that. Something closer to worry. I told myself I was reading into it. I told myself a lot of things that week. I woke that night sometime past 3 with a craving for a cigarette so sharp it pulled me straight out of sleep. It happens to me sometimes, has for years, and I've learned not to fight it too hard because fighting it just keeps me up longer. I pulled on a coat over my pajamas, slid my feet into boots by the door, and slipped out as quiet as I could, easing the door shut behind me so I wouldn't wake the house. The hallway outside our unit was empty, that flat, fluorescent quiet you only get at 3 in the morning, everyone else's lights off behind their doors. I lit up, leaning against the railing, looking out at the parking lot and the black tree line past it, and let the nicotine do its work. 2nd draw. 3rd. My mind actually went quiet for those few minutes, first time in days. I ground the butt out and turned back toward our door. He was standing right in front of it. The same kid, the one from the highway. I swore out loud, flinched back a full step before I caught myself. Up close, under the hallway light, something about him was wrong in a way I couldn't immediately name. Skin too pale, almost gray, like he hadn't seen daylight in longer than made sense for a kid his age. "Hey, what are you doing outside my door?" Nothing, just looking at me, that same flat stare. "I'm talking to you." "I came for your daughter," he said. No inflection at all, flat as a recorded announcement. "Excuse me? Get the hell away from my family, now!" "I'll take her either way," he said, in that same dead voice. And then he turned and walked off down the hall toward the stairwell, unhurried, like a kid heading home from school. And I stood frozen outside my own door until the stairwell door swung shut behind him. I don't remember deciding to wake Sarah. I just remember standing over the bed and her sitting bolt upright before I'd said more than 3 words. I told her everything. Emily's laptop, the boy on the highway, the boy outside our door. All of it. Out of order. Too fast. She didn't call me crazy. That was almost worse. She just went very still and asked me one question. "Did he say a name? Whoever that boy was, did he ever say his own name?" He hadn't, but something in the way she asked told me she already had one in mind. Neither of us slept again that night. At first light, without really discussing it, we got in the car and drove out to the cemetery. Emily stayed asleep at home, with the door locked and the camera, finally mounted the night before, pointed straight at her window from the hallway. We walked the rows slower than either of us wanted to, scanning stones, and it was Sarah who stopped first, a few rows down from her father's plot, in front of a small granite marker with a school photo set into the stone under glass. Tyler Whitfield, 15 years old, drowned the previous November out on the lake past the old mill, the kind of small-town tragedy that gets a paragraph in the local paper and then everyone just quietly stops saying his name out loud. We were both looking at the same face. The boy from the highway. The boy outside our door. Sarah made a sound I'd never heard come out of her before, and grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. That was when I remembered the toy. 2 weeks earlier, at the cemetery, while Sarah cried at her father's stone, and I stood there useless beside her. Emily had wandered off toward the tree line, toward this row, I realized now. Close enough. She'd come home that day with a small plastic toy car in her coat pocket, one I didn't recognize, and when I'd asked where she got it, she'd shrugged and said she found it on the ground, near the fence. Not on the ground. On a grave. This grave. We didn't talk about it in the car on the way home. There wasn't anything left to say that wouldn't have sounded insane out loud, and some part of both of us, I think, was already trying to talk ourselves out of what we now both believed. Emily was fine when we got back, watching cartoons, cereal bowl in her lap, completely unbothered, like the whole world hadn't tilted sideways while she slept. I checked the camera footage from the night. Nothing. An empty hallway, an undisturbed window, 9 hours of nothing at all. I told myself that was good news. I didn't fully believe it. That evening I made her hand over the toy car. She didn't want to, cried about it actually. Said it was hers now, said I was being unfair, but I got it from her in the end, and Sarah and I drove it back out to the cemetery ourselves and set it down at the base of Tyler's stone, in the last gray light before dark, feeling, both of us, like we were bargaining with something we didn't understand the terms of. For 2 days, nothing happened. I let myself believe, God help me, that it had actually worked. My leave was ending soon, and there were 100 small errands I'd been putting off, so I spent that final Sunday running them,
The bank, the pharmacy, a stop at the mall for a jacket Emily had outgrown. Sarah had plans of her own that afternoon. A coffee with her friend from the clinic. First thing she'd done for herself in weeks. And I told her to go, that I'd have Emily, that we'd be fine. I remember standing at the counter of the Tim Hortons in the strip mall on the way home, killing 10 extra minutes I didn't need to kill, in absolutely no hurry, because as far as I knew, there was nothing left to hurry home for. My phone rang while I was still in the parking lot. Sarah's name on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish some nights that I had. "Where are you?" she said, and her voice was already wrong, already broken in a way that made my whole chest go cold before she'd said another word.
10 minutes out. What's going on?" There was a long, terrible pause, and then a sound I don't think I'll ever fully stop hearing. "Our house is on fire. Emily's not." She couldn't finish it. She didn't need to. I don't remember most of that drive. I remember running 2 lights I had no business running. I remember thinking absurdly about the wiring in that building, about how Emily had never once played with matches in her life, about how none of it made any sense, and underneath all of it, a colder thought I couldn't push down. That the boy from the highway had told me, calm as anything, that he'd take her either way. I could see the smoke from 3 streets out. By the time I got the car stopped, I could see the flames themselves, pushing out through what used to be Emily's bedroom window, and the street already crowded with neighbors in coats thrown on over pajamas, and 2 fire trucks, and an ambulance with its doors standing open, and nobody moving fast around it anymore. I don't remember getting out of the car. I remember standing on the sidewalk with Sarah's hand locked around my arm so tight it left marks. Both of us just watching the fire take the building apart piece by piece. And somewhere behind us, an officer writing something on a clipboard, asking questions neither of us could really answer. We never got a real explanation for the fire. Faulty wiring, the report said eventually, in that flat official language that explains nothing at all. We moved out of Miller's Bend within the year. I never told the new tenants what happened in that apartment, or why. I still think about that hallway sometimes. The fluorescent light, the cigarette, the boy standing outside our door with that gray, patient face, telling me he'd take her either way. I used to think there was something we could have done differently. I don't believe that anymore. I don't smoke outside at night anymore, any night, in any building. And if I ever hear a kid's voice through a closed door, low and even, pausing like it's answering someone, I don't wait around to find out who they're talking to. I just leave the light on, and I get everyone I love as far from that door as I can.